I want to talk to you about the story of photographer Jeffrey Holland. He was specifically known for doing these night shoots in abandoned places. That was his thing. It's supposed to have a very creepy feel to it. This photo is from his last shoot, which was never publicized, as he went missing while exploring this church in Georgia. The church itself, it's just as eerie as you can imagine. Like, it's got a cemetery on the grounds, like it's a spooky place, right? Once he did eventually go missing, police come to the last known location, which is this church. They did find his camera, and they fixated on this picture because it looked off from the rest. Kind of like shaky, like it's motion blurred, almost as if he was running or something, but if you look to the bottom left, there's something even more disturbing in this picture. He was not alone in that church. There was somebody in there with him wearing a mask. So the discovery of this photo prompted a manhunt of the grounds looking for this person, or at least evidence that they were there. They did end up recovering the mask. As of today, it remains in an evidence locker, as nobody really knows what happened to this photographer with this person.
Donald Trump is a time traveler.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Okay, bro. So in 2000, on a online forum, this guy named John Titor started posting saying he was a time traveler from the year 2036. He said that he was in the year 2000 because he made a pit stop on his way to 1978, where he had to pick up this old computer. He needed this computer because in the year 2038, there was going to be this weird thing that happened with computers, and it's a real thing, which is crazy because
Y2K?
it was a Y2K type thing, but we didn't know that it was going to happen in 2000. Nobody except for the designers of that computer knew that that computer was capable of doing those things.
What does this have to do with Donald Trump?
He said he was in the year 2000 there was going to be an American Civil War between 2000 and 2036, and he was finding pictures of his family before the war broke out. That's why he made a stop in the year 2000. So where the conspiracy comes from is that Donald Trump has a uncle that worked at big computer company in like the 60s or the 70s and 80s, right?
Didn't he go to MIT or something like that
Yes.
too?
The conspiracy theory says John Titor is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump traveled back in time in order to prevent the war, which is why he ran for president. He used his uncle's time machine, and he traveled back in time in order to get himself all of this money.
He saw something in his room, but his parents didn't believe him. In 2010, a 15-year-old boy named James couldn't help but notice that the door to his attic located in his bedroom was always open. He couldn't understand why, as he was certain he always closed it. One day, as his mother scolded him for being lazy, he retorted, "Well, you're one to talk. You always leave my attic door open." His mother, taken aback, replied, "I haven't touched your attic door in months, and nobody else in this house has either." Rather than feeling fear, James was intrigued. He decided to leave the attic door open and observe what would happen. Well, that night, as he lay in bed, he glanced over at the open door, and to his shock, a figure stood in the doorframe staring right at him. Panicking, he bolted from his room and told his parents, but they dismissed his story as a product of an overactive imagination, and nothing was done. 6 months later, the family moved away for unrelated reasons. A few years passed, and James discovered that his favorite teacher, Miss Thompson, had moved into his old house. One day, he couldn't resist asking her, "Have you ever seen any ghost wandering around your attic?" Miss Thompson's expression shifted from lighthearted to grave. She said, "Slowly, as soon as we moved in, the door to the attic kept opening. It was so strange that we decided to investigate." She paused, her eyes filled with unease. "We found a hidden trap door that led onto the roof. Turns out someone had been crawling in through that entrance and living in the attic for years."
Scariest videos on the internet, part 4.
ليه في مطر أسود؟
Scary Places in the Netherlands Part 10. Muda slot was built in 1285. It is said that it's being haunted by the ghost of Machteld van Velsen. Machteld was married to Gerard van Velsen, who worked for Count Floris V, who lived in the Muda slot. After Floris executed Gerard's brother, Giret started publicly accusing him of treason. In order to make Giret pay for humiliating him, Flores took his wife, Mactilt. She was never the same after that and died not long after. Giret was furious and started secretly plotting against Flores. He succeeded, and Flores was locked up in the castle's prison before he was executed by Giret himself. Still up to this day, many people have said that when they were at the Muda slot, they felt a presence and that the atmosphere had changed, suddenly getting colder. Some people even said that while they were there, they heard Mactilt's ghost crying and begging for mercy. There was one skeptic who spent a night in the castle, laughing at the claims that it was haunted. He was never the same after that night, and claimed that he had seen things that shouldn't have been possible.
Earth's Scariest Places, Part 46. This place is Sathorn Unique Tower, located in Bangkok, Thailand. This building is nicknamed Ghost Tower, and for good reason. It's rumored to be very haunted. And just look at it, it just looks super creepy. This building was supposed to be a 47-story luxury high-rise apartment building, but it halted completion at around 80% complete during the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Today it just acts as a giant billboard, but the building and everything inside was left completely abandoned. It's also extremely forbidden to go inside of here, but people have made their way inside and have reported stray dogs, pieces of the building falling apart, organized crime, and of course, ghosts inside. Laughter, footsteps, and screams have been reported echoing through these halls. It's also extremely dangerous because the building is falling apart. That's why this is one of...
You would be surprised at the people who envy you without you doing absolutely nothing to deserve it. Story time. This story was submitted by Mello. This all started back in 2020. Mello had just moved to a new state where she had started a new boarding school. Once her grades came up, Mello was upset to find out that she had actually failed all of her classes, which was shocking to her because she has always been a very good student and has never struggled when it comes to school. Then COVID happened and everybody had to go home and do online school. Her teachers were getting worried because Mello kept failing class after class. At this point, she became depressed. One night, she had been up late studying when at about 2 a.m., a very elderly woman woke her up. When Mello woke up, she was met by this elderly woman shouting in her face, telling her to go close all of her books and put something heavy on top of them to protect them. Mello was confused by this request, but without even realizing it, she got up, closed her books, and covered them up. The next day, she calls her mom and tells her about her experience. When she described the elderly woman to her mom confirmed that that was in fact her great-grandmother who had passed away. Now fast forward a month later, her mom ends up taking her to a healer because things were still just not adding up. When she walked in, the first thing the healer told her was that someone had done black magic on her to get her to fail all of her classes. The healer then gave Mello a lotion and a powder that she can rub on herself that would protect her while she was at school. Mello was in shock and couldn't believe that there was someone out there that was practicing dark magic just to get her to fail. Her mom has always been very intuitive and she was able to figure out who this person was. As it turns out, this person lived only 3 houses away from them, and it was the grandmother of one of Mello's friends. Mello ended up getting cleansed. Once she was cleansed, fast forward 3 weeks, that old woman ended up falling in the shower and...
This is probably one of the scariest encounters with the Serbian dancing lady. I mean, just look at that face. It said that if you make eye contact with her, you're her next victim. If you want to learn more about her and see some of the scariest sightings, then check out my latest video, The Scariest Serbian Dancing Lady Sightings, now on YouTube. Link in bio!
Remember those nights where the family comes together and they talk about ghost stories? So I would leave the house and go to my bisabuela's house in Mexico, and man, those were the days. Oye, ¿qué pasó con la señora ahí de abajo? They would tell stories about back in the day, and just imagine if they had cell phones. They would be able to capture, all of this paranormal activity. Then everyone starts to leave like at 1 a.m. and there's me just like scared, just like freaked out, just like don't want to go walk home. Yeah, it was terrifying.
Earth's Scariest Places, Part 39. This is the Castle of Good Hope, located in Cape Town, South Africa, just miles north of the Cape of Good Hope, which I talked about in the previous video. This place has a very dark history of torture and murder. Built by the Dutch East India Company in the 17th century, the castle was used as a pit stop for sailors on their way from Europe to Asia. The castle houses a bakery, a church, a bunch of shops, and residences, but it also houses a torture chamber. Dutch East India Company would bring their slaves and prisoners here and brutally torture and murder them. One story stands out in particular. In 1729, the governor of Cape Town wrongly sentenced 7 soldiers to death, and they were to be hung at the Castle of Good Hope. Before being hung, one of the soldiers put a curse on the governor, and now his soul remains here. Now the governor and plenty of other victims of the torture and murder that happened here's ghosts roam the halls. Today you can go see this place for yourself. That's why the Castle of Good Hope is one of...
This is said to be real footage inside of an asylum. And just watch what this prisoner does. He just started levitating in mid-air. People believe that this is part of the Russian sleep experiment. More on that in my next video.